Have you ever met somebody for the first time and you take this immediate liking? Could be their energy, their presence, could be the way they look at you. It's almost like they're a new old friend. And that's how my guest this week came about. Every week I do a show on Canadian television called Brand Matters, where I share the branding stories that I feel matter most to the audience.
I hope we have Tony. Oh, there he is. Hey, good morning, Tony. How are you?
Live from Costa Rica.
I'm loving your studio. I can't wait to be there.
Tony, let's start with this. Maybe you took Air Canada to get there, but Air Canada now has new fees for carry-on luggage.
Don't you feel like you're a passenger walking onto an airline and suddenly you turn into a piggy bank and they turn you upside down and just shake you?
And before I go on the show, I'm sitting in the green room and I meet the most interesting people there. And that's how my guest came about. Her name's Sim Seera. She was there to talk about her small business, but we also got to talk about her backstory, which I thought was magical.
The man stops him and he says, "Hey, I know you. You're Colonel's son." And he says, "Yeah, I am." He said, "How do you know?" He said, "Because you look exactly like him." Very special. I'm so glad that I was able to witness that moment.
And what makes it even more magical is that rather than recording her remote, I asked her to come and join me at a conference I was hosting for the Convenience Industry Council of Canada. It's a wonderful association run by Anne Kothawala that really focuses on supporting the convenience sector. Let's go live and hear what Sim Seera has to say about her life and why it matters. Hi, it's Tony Chapman. Thank you for listening to Chatter That Matters, presented by RBC. If you can, please subscribe to the podcast, and ratings and reviews, well, they're always welcome and they're always appreciated. Sim Seera, give a round of applause. Tell us where you were born.
So I was born in India on the Independence Day, August 15th, 1986. And I was the third daughter. I was the third girl. And growing up, I had always heard from my family that my mom really wanted a boy. And it was like a known thing that everybody prayed that I would be a boy. And I came out and I surprised everybody and stole everyone's heart. I was always told this story not to take away from the fact that I wasn't a boy, but it was almost like encouraging, you can do anything that if you were a boy that you could have done. So I was very lucky in that sense.
In those days, there were people within your culture that would play a little bit of roulette if they knew they really wanted a boy and they were disappointed.
Yeah, it's very common. It still happens to this day. And I'll credit this to my grandfather, my dad's dad. He was very progressive and a feminist, and he was an advocate for women and women's rights. And so that's how he raised my dad and my uncles. It was never a question in their minds.
So you come along, there's three girls, and then your parents go back and try again because your mom's dream, and then you have a younger brother.
Yeah.
Just describe India, hospitality, family, because sometimes I think what we tend to forget in our busy world is the importance of matters of the heart.
So my childhood was very magical. My dad had started an importing-exporting business when just before my eldest sister was born. And so he traveled a lot. He went to Bangkok, Singapore, Hong Kong, and he would always come back with really cool gifts, things that you can find in our town market. And so we were very fortunate to be, wearing like the trendy clothes, playing with the toys that nobody else in town had. The Indian culture is very rooted on family. So my uncle lived next door. I had adult cousins. My grandparents, my mom's parents, they lived a 15-minute walking distance. We were the first grandkids on that side. So we were absolutely spoiled rotten.
So you get this incredible fusion of love and family and meals. And you're at age 5 and you're at your aunt's place and it's going to be a big family celebration. Take us back to that moment when life changed, when you went from being we're all here celebrating, nose pressed against the window. When's mom and dad showing up to?
Yeah, so we had this big family gathering. We were celebrating my cousin, and my grandfather from Canada had flown in. My aunts and uncles from all the different parts of India were there as well. And the last person to really arrive was my dad. He was coming back from a trip. And so it was Friday evening. My mom left with my baby brother. She never let him out of her sight. And she said, "Don't worry, I'm going to see you guys in the morning." We were safe in the hands of my aunts and uncles and cousins. It was not uncommon for her to leave us with them. And I will never, so that Friday night's a blur. I don't remember. I was, it was 2 weeks before my 5th birthday. But the morning after, I remember so vividly, and I'll never forget it. It was my older cousin. She was about 16 who woke me up. It was about 5:30 in the morning. She brought me downstairs to the family room area. And I saw my brother sitting on the day bed, and he was about 18 months. And I remember scanning the room looking for my mom because she wouldn't have ever let him out of her sight. I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong, but I knew something was wrong. And I looked at my cousin and I said, "Where's my mom?" And she said, "Don't worry, your parents, they just went away on a little trip and they're going to come back." And I thought, okay, that's odd. Mom would have never left him behind. There's no way that mom and, it was common for my dad to go away, but never for them to go away together without my brother. Through just eavesdropping on adult conversations, I learned that my parents had passed away.
They were in a horrific car accident.
Yeah. So my dad was so excited to come to be with the rest of my family because, again, like our celebrations were big. Everybody was there. It was full of a lot of love and laughter. And he was so excited to see his family that he wanted to drive overnight to surprise everyone. And he never got to. So this is like rural roads that they're passing through. There's no lights. And they were coming around a bend. They're on a motorcycle. My brother is sandwiched in between my parents. There was a drunk bus driver who was weaving in and out of his lane. He was missing one headlight. And from kind of the CSI investigation that we were provided with, and they determined how this would have happened, they believe that my mom saw that there was about to be a collision, and she threw my brother out of her arms into a ditch, and they had full head-on contact, and it was hit and run. Bus driver did not stop. People on the bus told him, "Hey, you hit somebody." And we learned all this after. And he got to the station wherever he needed to get to.
Your brother survives, obviously, because you saw him that morning. How long did it take for you to really process that your parents weren't on a trip and they'd be coming back shortly and that they'd in fact passed away?
Years, like into my teens. Even though I kind of saw their funeral happening, even though we moved to Canada, all of these things were happening, but there was still that like child in me that was like, no, they're going to come back. I had never gone to a funeral. I didn't know what death meant. My only understanding of death up until that point was Bollywood movies. I hadn't experienced it in real life. I had all of my grandparents.
And you weren't even at the funeral. You were kind of, you said, peeking over, sort of peeking into it.
Yeah, I learned this as an adult from my aunt, and she said that they had a family meeting about whether they should allow us to be there or not. And they just decided that it was best that we weren't, and that wasn't the last memory because they were so badly injured that that's not what they wanted us to remember of our parents. So we were Indians, we had a very open concept, home. So the funeral took place in our family home in the veranda, and we were at my uncle's house next door on the roof, and we could peer over to see. And again, even then I saw everyone dressed in white, which was common in what I had seen in Bollywood movies. But that was the brass. I didn't want to believe it.
I mean, as sad as that is to me as a father, what made me even sadder is the fact that, the 3 sisters and the younger brother, just out of necessity, they had to split you up afterwards just so that you could be provided for.
Yeah. So all of my aunts and uncles had children of their own and families and households of their own that they had to run. And so to take on 4 children and, 2 toddlers basically it's a lot to ask of anybody. And so the best way they could make it work was if each one of my aunts and uncles kind of took one of us in.
Your 2 older sisters were together. You were alone and your younger brother was alone. How do you even compartmentalize that? I mean, this was a family that was tight, that you couldn't wait for your dad to come home with the latest toys, and you lived this sort of very privileged existence. And then all of a sudden that not only your parents ripped from you, but the siblings.
Definitely very traumatic, especially every time I had to separate from my brother because he didn't want to be separated from us, but that was what had to be done. That was what was necessary at that time.
And the grandfather that had come over from Canada turns out to be one of the great heroes in your story.
Yes.
Because he wants to bring the family back together. But to do so, you're going to leave India now and come to Canada.
When he came back here, he did not sleep. He figured out, how do I get these 4 grandchildren to come to Canada? I do not want to separate them. I want to keep them together. This is all they have. And he started to research and start the paperwork in bringing us to Canada, which, when you think back to at that time, like, I'm not even sure. This is somebody who English is not his first language. How do you communicate? Like, I don't know how he did it. It's quite a miracle.
And when you arrive in Canada, how old is he and how old's your
He
grandma?
was in his late 70s.
Late 70s. So he's decided that this is his calling to bring you over. What was your first experiences of Canada?
Oh my God. I remember when we landed here, and I think it was probably like 10 degrees. It was April, but it felt like I was in the Arctic. I had never experienced cold like that in my life. And I was like, take me back to India. So that part, the temperature was huge. And then we lived in an apartment building on the 11th floor. That was new. I had never been in an elevator. And then just meeting and seeing people from different backgrounds. Most of my friends in the building that I lived in were Vietnamese, Korean, and Chinese. And that was all new. Like, the food was new. Their culture was new, all of it.
Coming in April, how old are you now?
I was going to be 7 that year.
Did you start school right away?
Yes, I was in grade 1.
That alone is difficult because you're not only dealing with elevators and people that look different than you are, you got to go into a school system. Was anyone there to help you cope with that? Or was it just kind of throw you out into this world and hope that you survive?
So I started on the tail end of grade 1, but they determined that I knew enough English to move on to grade 2. And then it wasn't until grade 3 that I had the teacher who I call my Miss Honey. She was married with kids, but to me, she was the equivalent of Miss Honey and Matilda. She really saw me and she made me feel just valued and seen. And I had her for grade 5 as well. And then I came back to volunteer. I was just in complete awe of who she was and how she did what she did, just making all the kids feel valued and seen. And our school was very multicultural. So my cousins and I were the only Indian kids. And so we had a little bit of everybody represented at our school. Mrs. Parker did such a great job of understanding everyone's cultural background. And this is 25, 30 years ago now, right? It wasn't as common for teachers to take that much of an incentive in kids' different backgrounds.
Today, at least what I'm getting from my nieces and friends who've got young daughters or granddaughters, is that today it seems more about ideology and dividing cultures and getting people to apologize for past sins versus it sounds like what your Miss Honey did, which is this sense of saying, we're all a human race. Can we not learn and embrace each other?
I just learned that from her myself as a kid because I felt like I wasn't represented. No one, I didn't celebrate Christmas. Over the break, sometimes I felt like I had to lie to be like, yeah, I got this present, which I didn't get. But she would tell me and make me feel that it was okay. I understand. I know that you don't celebrate Christmas. What do you celebrate? How did you celebrate? And that was really important.
And your older sister, who is kind of at that age where her identity and wants to be part of that teen tribe, she really has to become the mother of the family.
Yeah, we just talked about this a couple of years ago. We felt comfortable, my sisters and I, to even talk about our childhood because we always paint it very beautifully, even the trauma that we had to endure. We always feel like, we never focus on what we didn't have. We always focus on what we did have, which was my grandfather who did so much for us. She didn't have anybody to protect her. She just immediately, when she had the most understanding of, okay, my parents are dead and now I have to take care of my younger siblings and I have to protect them and I have to keep us together. I don't know where she found that strength from. She's very faithful. And so she credits it to God just giving her that strength. But yeah, she didn't have a childhood. She surrendered her entire childhood to raising my brother.
And your brother, he's got to deal with, why am I alive and my parents aren't?
So when my mom threw him in the ditch, there was no sign that there was a child at that scene. And it was the mayor of another small town that was passing through that found my parents. And it was my dad who motioned to him that there was a toddler, there was a baby with them. And if he hadn't said that, he would not have known to even look for somebody else. And so my brother had wandered off in the complete opposite direction into tall grass field. And a farmer on the other end found him, brought him home. And they realized, okay, well, he's dressed well. So he comes from a good family. And, those are the realities of India. Because it's to say, what if he wasn't? And then he would have just been left. the word had kind of spread that they had found this child and it must belong to somebody. Let's figure out who it is. And so that's how he was returned to us. There is stray dogs, there is animals, there is snakes. There's so many things. There's so many things that could have happened to him. And we may not have found him alive, but we found him without a scratch, which is a miracle in itself. And so when we came to Canada, when I started school, I was very fortunate that the school provided me with social services. And I saw a social worker once a week, every week for throughout elementary school, which was my saving grace. Even though I lied a lot to the social worker, just saying that my grandma was baking cookies with me and doing all these things that we didn't do because I was just trying to fit in. And she knew that I was just trying to fit in. But my brother was not provided any of those services. They didn't feel that he needed it, but I think he needed it more than he would have benefited more from it than I did.
You talked about this quote, and I always believe in journeys, we meet our Yodas along the way, our fairy godmother that gets us to the ball. And you use this quote that I absolutely love: when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I never thought of it that way. Maybe we're always surrounded by people that are willing to help, but we have to be ready as well.
So all throughout my life, I've had lots of instances where I had learned the lesson that I needed to learn. And then there was this person who wanted to teach me and help me be better at whatever it was. And so for me, at an early age, it was Mrs. Parker. She really saw me. She saw, how gifted I was and encouraged and helped my aunt, who was my legal guardian, and my grandfather, to help them explore it within me. So I was very lucky to have her to be able to do that for me. And then as life went on, and my grandfather is one of those people as well for me.
You try to play this in your brother's life because he hasn't got this coping mechanism. He's starting to spiral into alcohol, drugs. He's trying to find a place.
So when he was about 16, he started smoking weed and then gradually got worse. And by his early 20s, he was a functioning addict. And from the outside, he was the life of the party. You would never know that this kid had been through what he had been through and why how he was numbing his pain. You would really just look at him and be like, oh my God, he's so funny. He's always smiling. He's always laughing. But behind closed doors, he was a wreck.
Even that he's living with you and you eventually get to the point where you have to throw him out just to kind of wake him up. At the same time, you realize that maybe you can help him by taking him to India. So share the story about what it was like for you to go back to your village that you wouldn't remember as a 5-year-old, for him to at least find some roots.
It was 2016. I decided to kind of sell all my stuff and I said, hey, let's go take this trip. Like, let's go back to India. Let's go find out about mom and dad and the accident. Let's go see it all, right? I thought that would be helpful. So we're in our small town. He decides to take a walk on his own through town. And as he's walking past this man's house, the man stops him and he says, hey, I know you. You're Kernal's son. And he says, yeah, I am. He said, how do you know? He said, because you look exactly like him. And my brother laughed and he said, wow, you laugh exactly like him. And for someone who has no idea what their parents look like, sound like, any of it, I can't imagine what that feeling was like for him. He was really looking to connect and to find out, the certain mannerisms that he had. My grandfather would always tell him, oh, you get mad just like your dad. Oh, you're just like, and it's like, well, I don't know how that person was, so I don't know what any of this means. And so that moment I know was very, very special to him because he came home, he was so excited to say, hey, I met this friend of dad's, they went to school together, and he said I looked just like him, and I laughed just like him, and I walked just like him. And yeah, that was very special. I'm so glad that I was able to witness that moment.
When we return, Sim and I delve deeper into her story. So far, it's been one of substance and tragedy. But how do you mend a broken heart? Well, what Sim does next is truly inspirational. It's truly chatter that matters.
Hi, it's Tony Chapman from Chatter That Matters. The world's upside down and having peace of mind seems to be the exception versus the rule. RBC Wealth Management is hoping to change that. They don't have a crystal ball, but they do have a team of experts dedicated to working with you to preserve and grow your wealth and help you manage risk so that you can enjoy the rewards of your labor. Your peace of mind and financial health matters to RBC.
Like, it was common for my dad to go away, but never for them to go away together without my brother. Through just eavesdropping on adult conversations, I learned that my parents had passed away.
Today, my special guest is Sim Seera. Chances are you've never heard her name, but after listening, you'll never forget her story. You've left this very successful career at TD. You started off at the lowest possible level, but they keep fast-tracking you into people and culture. And this is going to come back to some great notes of hospitality for all of us. But throughout all of this, you need to find something new. So you moved to Saskatoon. And for someone that thought 10 degrees in April was cold, what took you to Saskatoon and what were you looking for?
So I really grew to love winter in Canada. I don't know. I just was fascinated. I had one of my employees when I worked at TD, she had gotten a great job and moved out west. And so I wanted to go visit her. And I remember it was like minus 45. And yeah, people thought I was out of my mind.
I got to paint this picture, a very successful career. You go to a place that nobody knows your name, and you take a job working at Starbucks.
My long-term goal in life is to have my own, own and operate my own business, coffee shop preferably. And I wanted to learn from the best in the business, and Starbucks was it. I wanted to learn at a corporate level. I wanted to see their business model. I wanted to see their training. What they've done is incredible. And so I felt like, who better to learn from than them? And I remember when the manager was interviewing me and she said, do you want to just go into the management program? And I said, no, I want to just start off as a barista and I'll go from there.
You're sort of 9 months into this stint. You get one of the worst phone calls that you could ever get.
Yeah, I'll never forget that day. So it was March 30th. And my sister, there's an hour difference between here and Saskatoon. And my sister called me at 10:30. And I thought, that's so odd because she doesn't call me after 9:30. She's got 3 kids. She's got to put them to bed. And so I knew even before I answered that something was wrong. And so when I answered, her voice was shaking and she said, there was a fire at my brother's place. She said, I'm on my way there now. Please pray that he's still alive. And he was not.
Just for context, it wasn't a substance abuse issue or anything else. It was an accident that we often warned about. Once a pot is on fire, what to do with it. You came back to Toronto. You meet another teacher that set you on another path in life, a purpose versus maybe being wallowing in the past.
So after my brother passed away, I moved back here. I knew that I didn't want to go back to Saskatoon or anywhere else. I wanted to stay close to my sisters. I wanted to be, close enough to them. I guess you could say I was feeling a little lost because I didn't know where to go, what to do. And then I got a call from a really close friend who knew of all of my dreams and aspirations before my brother had passed away. And he said, hey, Sim, I've got a good friend that's opening up this new restaurant. And I think it's everything that you value. And I want to connect the two of you. And so his name is Shant Mardarisian. He started The Burgers Priest, which he sold to Recipes Canada. And so now this was his new venture. And I went to go meet him in August of 2019. And I remember him explaining his vision and, he was so passionate about it. And I was like, yeah, this is the person that I want to work for. This is the person that I want to learn from.
And what was his vision?
So he was opening up a pizzeria, being able to provide like gourmet food at a good price point where you're not breaking the bank. But the innovative part was everything you ordered, each table was going to have an iPad and you ordered through that. And I remember asking him, I said, have you tested this out? And he said, no, I just know it's going to work. And it did.
And it's called Fourth Man in the Fire.
That's right.
You come on as sort of his 2IC.
Yeah.
Probably the greatest gift that's ever happened because of the success and how well you work together. But COVID hits.
So up until COVID happened, we were just an evening restaurant. It was like 5 onwards just for dinner. And I remember how quick he was to just change the hours. Okay, we're going to be open from 12. We're going to start offering slices. We added so many snacks that you see over there on our online menu. And you would be shocked to see how many people were ordering a slice of pizza along with Kit Kat and all these other things that you wouldn't necessarily think you would get from a pizzeria, but people were doing it. And he was so quick to pivot and add. And how do we monetize, right? Like, how do we keep this business alive? How do we keep people employed?
What did you learn about humanity and hospitality when COVID sort of slammed the shutters down on everything you dreamed about doing?
That as humans, we live for human connection. During that time, I mean, and Sean will agree to this, that our success is because of the community where our restaurant is. They came out to support us. I've seen the kids in my neighborhood grow up. I know them by name. I know their birthdays because they've come to celebrate it with us. It's that human connection piece is what I would say the takeaways for everyone.
I saw you operate. Is that something that's just baked into your DNA? So you're just so grateful to be alive and connected to humanity? Or is this something you can nudge and encourage other people when they come to work for you and they go, I'm just here for a part-time job?
One of the things, like from my time at TD, and I want to share this because it was 19, starting off as a teller. And I remember the branch manager would come in every morning before he went to his office. He would come around to every employee, greet you by your name, ask you how you're doing. And that stayed with me, being valued and being seen. And so that's something I try to instill. And that's something I try to do because I know how it made me feel. And I try to do that with every person that I meet. Even just starting the interview process. I want to get, it's not just about what's on the resume. It's about everything else and what really that person is about.
How do you find people who know how to dance that between efficiency and empathy?
That part is not easy. I'm not going to lie. You have to really weed through a lot of resumes. But some of the best people that I've met was never actually from a resume. It was just from physically meeting them. I remember when I worked at TD, a lot of the employees that I hired that have gone on to incredible things, I found at Starbucks just from going there every single day and just connecting with them, learning more about them. And then I was like, what did you study? How can we get you to move on to the next thing?
When you're working together and you start expanding your business, how do you stretch that out? Because I can see if I'm on my shift with you, it's quite contagious. But, I'm now moving from 1 store to 2 stores to 3 stores. How does culture ever compare to when you're just a small family and everybody knows your name?
I don't know. I think maybe it is just in my DNA. I'm very good with just getting to know the people that I'm working with and the demographic and the community. I think that really, really matters.
We went from we can't find staff to an abundance of staff. It's just this crazy pendulum we've been living through as a country. But you told me a couple of stories of people that have come to work for you that are actually earning money to put themselves through university. I mean, their end game is not to be working in your pizza place for the rest of their life, but they've really found a purpose and a passion there.
So one of my newest hires, he's in a program in Schulich, and it's only 120 students that get into this program. And this is his very first job in Canada. I was so lucky that somebody referred him to me. He's naturally an introvert, and he said that to me. And he said, but I love what you guys do here. I love what you stand for. I love that community feeling because when I was sitting with him, every customer that was walking in, I knew them by name and I was welcoming back. And he was like, I want to be a part of that. It makes me feel good to see that, these people are coming in here every day. There was customers that were walking by that were just knocking on the window to say hi. That's how well we know our community. And so he was like, this is what I want to be a part of. So he has to keep himself in check when he's at the front because sometimes he can come off very serious. And he's like, no, I have to be here. I have to be present. I have to be attentive. And he wants to be a part of that. So
what's next? Are you at a point now in your life where you're feeling centered and you're going, bring on the next decade? I can't wait. And you talked about opening up that coffee shop. Where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years?
Definitely 10 years for sure. Owning having my own little coffee shop. I want to call it Sim's Place. And I want it to not just be coffee. I want it to be like a convenience store with really, really good coffee. Because I think, I want to share this story. So it's about a convenience store that I go to buy my lottery ticket. I only play when it's the most. So I only buy my lottery ticket a handful of times throughout the year. And I've been going to the same place for 5 years. This guy, if I died in front of his restaurant, in front of the convenience store, he would not know who I was. But I built that connection with him. I kept telling him, hey, it's me again. I only come here to buy my lottery ticket from you. And I remember one day I ran into another one of my regular customers from the pizzeria there. And when I saw her, she said, I have never seen that man smile. How did you get him to smile? And I said, listen, it took a lot of work and persistence of just reminding him, hey, I'm here. And I thought of how could that interaction be different, right? whether it's a convenience store, wherever you're going, you can buy the same thing from so many different places. Yes, people can buy pizza from so many different places, but they come to us for that human connection, right? For like knowing that their business is valued here. And so I really wanted him to value my business, but I had to work on that. Whereas I feel like it should have been the other way around.
So when you open Sim's Place,
everyone is going to be valued. Like I want them to feel seen and noticed, because without customers, we don't have a business.
probably going to get capital offered to you today, so it might not be 10 years. You know, I always end my shows with my 3 takeaways. When the student is ready, the teacher arrives. You know, imagine if we could wave a magic wand to every employee that walks into our stores or our operations, and they realize that they know they're not there forever. You know they're not there forever, but they know when they leave, they'll be better for it because they've met a teacher in you. You're not just going to teach them how to run a cash or face the store shelves or go in and get people excited about Celsius. It's a human journey of finding ourselves and thinking different and feeling different and acting. So I love that story about you. I love the entrepreneurial, and I wish I could just, again, wave a magic wand in Canada because we're losing that sense of risk. We're so consumed by data and hiding ourselves in the office and being busy, but, you know, trying all these different things. How do I know it worked? I don't know, but let's try it. And having that sense of adventure, and I think of this, the C-store, the C sector, how much of an advantage you have in the ability to move and try and experiment and showcase young entrepreneurs and bring life to life, I think is wonderful. I guess the last thing is just taking a lesson from even though you only spent 5 years of your life in India, but this sense of family and gatherings and hospitality and recognizing there's so much we can learn for people that come to Canada and contribute to Canada and be part of Canada. So for all of that and more, Sim Seera, I am so happy you joined me in Chatter That Matters, and especially at this conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Once again, a special thanks to RBC for supporting Chatter That Matters. It's Tony Chapman. Thanks for listening, and let's chat soon.